Somewhere in early 2020 to mid 2020, I shifted in my gaming journey and I stopped playing as many new games and started speedrunning. It wasn't because I was disenfranchised with newer games or anything like that. I was just enjoying the journey of self improvement that speedrunning provided. Throughout this journey, there weren't really a lot of new games that really intrigued me. I was just so engaged in speedrunning. Uh, that is until Diablo 4 released. I was super excited for Diablo 4. It's like, all right, this is going to be the game that might distract me from speedrunning. Game came out. I played it. I had fun playing it, but I didn't get sucked in the way I thought I would. Previous Diablo games, when they launched, I basically neglected many, many things in my life because I was so addicted to playing the game, and I just didn't feel that. Next up, I was waiting. I was like, all right, Diablo 4, this is fine. This will be a fun casual thing I can just go to off and on, which is great. This is a good way for me to experience my games currently, anyways. Um, but then Starfield was another game I'm looking forward to. I'm like, all right, Starfield's coming out soon. I've always really enjoyed Bethesda games. This game has a high potential of sucking up a lot of my free time and consuming me just as a person. Game came out. Again, I enjoyed it, but I just didn't have that same pull. I didn't really feel like I had to play it. I wasn't like thinking about the game. I was still actually just wanting to speedrun stuff. Um, and it got me thinking. I've been talking to my best friend, and we're just talking about the shift in games in general. And it feels like triple A companies just don't give room to explore or create something new and different and take chances. Um, Being 40 years old, I grew up in an era where AAA titles were the titles that were taking chancels. They were the titles that were taking chances, though. They were doing new and innovative things, and that's why people were drawn to them. And then I don't know if the game industry grew too big for its britches or what exactly happened, but it kind of feels like we're in an era where stakeholders and shareholders and people who are outside of the actual gaming industry are making a ton of decisions for the people who are actually in the gaming environment or want to interact with it. And it just feels like there's a huge disconnect. Um, I know I cannot be the only person that feels this way. I mean, I'm talking to my best friend, he feels the same way. There's just not the same space given. They're like, there are too many stakeholders, too many people involved that have this monetary reason to be there. Whereas, like, before, the people making games were the people who played games. That's why they wanted to make games. They wanted to make cool stuff. I'm sure there were outliers who were just making them for money, but predominantly they were made by people who made games, and that it shifted. It's just not the same. And I find myself returning to older games. Just they're more enjoyable. I feel like they took more chances. They did more things. Uh, it wasn't like a room of people had to get together and be like, "Yeah, that sounds really fun, but we that might affect our money, so we can't do that." I don't know, it just feels bad. And I just wanted to make this video and see how everybody else is feeling about the current state of the gaming industry. Are you happy with the way new games are? I'd also be interested in hearing from different generations because maybe this is a generational thing, and maybe I'm just old man, get off my lawn about this whole thing because I recognize that I do have a particular view based on my age, and so I'm wondering from current like what first. I guess what I'm interested in is if you would like to comment on this video, I'd love to know what your first console was, what your first game was, and what you play now, and how you feel about the current state of the gaming industry as a whole. And what do you think could potentially shift this space, this atmosphere of triple A companies taking zero chances and just making bland, regurgitated baloney? There now, don't get me wrong. There are indie studios out there who are still making games. Indie studios exist, and they are making games. But the problem isn't that these games don't exist. The problem is those aren't the games that are getting all the attention, that are getting all the money, that are people are buying a ton of copies for. those companies that are making these cool, innovative new things don't have the budgets for marketing and things like that. And they just, a lot of times they get overlooked. Or a AAA studio sees this little company that is making these awesome games, they scoop them up and then just demolish all creativity. They flatten it out and they're like, all right, we got to stick to this formula. This is the formula that worked. Let's keep doing this thing because this is how it works. And it's just, it feels like a bunch of people giving advice about a thing that they have never done themselves. It's weird. It's weird. It's like making a YouTube video about creating content when you yourself have never made content outside of creating content about creating content. Like, that's weird. Maybe that's just me, but that feels weird. Like, I don't think I want advice about creating content from somebody who's never made content. I don't know. I'd love to hear everybody's thoughts. Maybe I'm way off base. I do recognize that my opinions can be flawed. Maybe I'm missing something, but I'd love to hear. I'd love to hear about it. That's it. Get out of here. I'm not your real dad.